Good morning. It's my pleasure to introduce Russ Ingold to you. Russ has been my diving coach off and on for the last 20 years, and he served on the judging panel for All-American Diving. He's been Canada's Swim Coaches Association president for many years. Gave that up a couple of years ago, but most importantly, he's a good friend. And he's going to be speaking today about diving for swim coaches. So if you will give Russ your attention.
Good morning. When Arvel told me I was going to do this, didn't ask me I was going to, he told me I was going to do this. He said the topic was going to be diving for swim coaches. Okay, what do you want me to talk about diving for swim coaches? Just that, diving for swim coaches. And I've been to a lot of swim or diving clinics where you get there and we had this great college coach would come in and he would start talking about level about this high. And all the new coaches who were coming in had no idea what he was talking about. So my presentation today is going to be from the ground up for people who know absolutely nothing about diving. From there, I had a parent from a parent group, booster club, asked me to, they wanted their swim parents to understand more about diving. So she put out a newsletter and I put some information on there about how diving works so we could be more of a team as with swimmers and divers. So this presentation is basically what I told them. So it's like I said, it starts from the beginning and from not knowing anything and going on. So the first thing is always diving is not swimming. We have so many, we've had several swim coaches kind of try to compare about how to do practices and how to do this. It's like trying to compare basketball and volleyball. They're both on the same court, but they're different games. Football and soccer, they're outside on the field, but they're different. So first thing is diving is not swimming. Excuse me. There are 5 basic categories of dives. You have forward dives. It's where the diver stands on the board facing the water and rotates forward into the water. Back dives, where they stand on the end of the board with their back facing the water, rotating toward the water. Reverse dives, and this is the hardest category for kids to learn, where they're standing in the forward position, walking to the end of the board, and rotating backwards toward the board. Inward dives, backward takeoff, but they rotate toward the board. And twisting dive is a dive from any of the other 4 categories, but has a twist in it. I had a girl just the other day go, well, I need a reverse dive. Can I do a reverse dive, a reverse somersault half twist? Doesn't count as a reverse dive. It counts as a twist dive. So any dive that has a twist in it goes to the twist category. 4 different positions. We have straight, where the body is in the straight position, head to toe, no bend. A pike position, where the body only bends at the waist. Tuck position, where the body bends at the waist and the knees. And the free position, which is a combination of 2 or more of the other 3 positions. And a free position is only used in twist dives. Each dive has a number. All forward dives are 100 dives. Back dives are 200s. Reverse dives are 300s. Inward dives are 400s. And twist dives are 5,000s. So when you go to a diving meet and they announce the number for the dive, it has each one of those numbers has a specific reason. And there's a position for each dive. It can be straight, pike, tuck, or free, and A, B, C, or D is a designation for each one of those positions. How to decode a dive number. I make all my kids know what the dive numbers means because that is the official description of the dive. If they have a dive number and their written out description is different, you always go by the number. So in this case, if we were doing a front 1.5 pike or 103B, 100 dive, the 100 means it's a forward dive, and the 3 means that there are 3 half somersaults. So in this case, a 103B is forward, 3 half somersaults, and B is the pike position, so it's a forward 1.5 in the pike position. And if it has a different position, it is the same dive. So a 103C and a 103B are the same dive, they're just done in different positions. And we get the same question too. Well, I can do a front 1.5 tuck and a front 1.5 pike, those are different dives. No, they're still a front 1.5, to just do the position different. In a twist dive, which starts with 5, 5 means it's a twist dive. The next number means which category it comes from. The third number is how many half somersaults. And the fourth number is the number of how many half twists. For example, if we're doing the 5132D, 5 means it's twists. The 1 means it's from the forward group. The 3 means there's 3 half somersaults. And the 2 means there's 2 half twists. So a 5132 is a forward 1.5 somersault. In this case, in the free position, with full twist in the free position. Forward 1.5 somersault, 1 twist in the free position. Degree of difficulty. Each dive is assigned a degree of difficulty, or how difficult it is to do. There is a formula that you use that they figure out how many somersaults, how many twists that you use to figure out the degree of difficulty it is. It runs from 1.2, which is a forward dive tuck, to 405B. Of course, 4 is inward, so it's an inward 2.5 somersaults tuck. Don't see that very often, but every once in a while. The range goes from 1.2 to 3.4. Optionals and voluntaries. This can sometimes get confusing. In a diving meet, we have 2 different types of dives. We have an optional dive and a voluntary dive. And the easiest way for me to try to explain that is when we're doing the 500 or the 50. The 50 would be considered the voluntary dive, or the easier of the 2, and the 500 would be the optional dive, or the harder of the 2. Now, I wish I could say that works in every single situation, but it doesn't. There are some situations where we can use reverses back and forth. We use reverse dive as optional and reverse somersault as the voluntary. Judging. Here comes the part where most new coaches are scared to do. I've never judged. I don't know what to give. All I can tell as judges is to judge what you see. This is the range that we go through. It goes from 0 to 10, where 0 is a failed dive, or I like to call them incomplete dives. Sounds a little bit better than failed. A 1/2 to 2 is unsatisfactory. An unsatisfactory dive might be where they list the dive as a 1.5 pike and they do a 1.5 tuck. They do the wrong position. A deficient is a dive that's not quite satisfactory, but just a little bit better than unsatisfactory. Of course, then there's satisfactory. Most meets you see lots of satisfactory dives between that 5.5 and 6.5 range, or 5 to 6.5 range. A good dive, 7 to 8. A very good dive from 8.5 to 9.5, and an excellent dive from 10. We used to say to get a 10, it had to be a perfect dive. Well, as we all know, there's not too many perfect dives ever done. So if an athlete does an excellent dive, better than you've ever seen it before, then you could probably give that a 10. Not too many can count. Like I said, when you're judging, decide which group that you think it would be in, one of those groups, either a failed dive or all the way to excellent dive. And then you can decide where in that range it is. If it's just barely satisfactory, then you can give it a 4. Or, yeah. If it's just barely good, then you can give it a 5. Or if it's really good, then you can give it a 6.5 or 7. We have the National Federation has put out an excellent source of reference for judging officials. And it is excellent about how to go through and what to look for and things like that. So, Sandy, excellent. Scoring a meet. There are 2 components that go into calculating scores for meet. You have the DD and you have the judge's score. And what we do, we'd like to have at least 3 judges on the panel. Sometimes we can use 2, and there's a mathematical formula you can do to adjust that to get the score. But we need at least 3 scores. The ideal situation is to have more than 3 so we can drop the high and low score, so we get the middle 3. And we can have panels from 3, 5, 7, and 9. Usually we have an odd number. Makes cutting the high and low easier. And of those 3 scores, you take those 3 scores, add them together, multiply times the degree of difficulty. That gets the score for that dive. Add up all the dives together, and that's what they get the score for the meet. If you have any questions, please ask, because I'm going through this a little bit quickly. 3 scores are added together, and the D multiplied by the DT gives the score for that dive. We have 2 different formats of a dive meet. We have a 6-dive meet, which is generally done in a dual meet situation or a situation where we have just 2 or 3 teams. That's where they do 6 dives. The National Federation has set up a schedule for the voluntary dive, because in a 6-dive meet we have to have 1 voluntary and 5 optionals. For instance, the first week of competition is the forward dive is the dive of the week. And your first dive has to be from that category. It can be any dive you want it to be, but it has to come from that category, and the highest degree of difficulty you can get is a 1.8. So you could have a kid who does a front 2.5 pike, which is 2.6, I believe, but they'd only get credit for a 1.8. Then the next 5 dives has to come from 4 of the 5 categories. So you can double up on one category, and this is a situation where, like I said, the reverse dive is the hardest one, the hardest one for kids to do. You could go through, they could be in a 6-dive meet and not have to do a reverse dive, except for the week where the reverse dive is dive of the week. 11 dive, or a championship format, is a little bit, there's some strategy involved in 11 dive meet. It's divided into 3 different sessions. The first session they do 5 dives, 2 voluntary and 3 optionals. The second session is they do 3 dives, 2 voluntaries and 1 optionals. And the third session is they do 3 dives, 1 voluntary and 2 optionals. They have to do at least 1 dive from each category. Do 1 voluntary from each category and 1 optional from each category, and they get that choice to do a second optional from 1 category. Your strong divers, this is not a big deal. They can put their dives in any order they want to do. It's the, I don't want to say marginal, but the less experienced divers who are just trying to get to the next session, where they top load their list with their best dives first, their next to the best dives in the second session, and usually their last 3 dives are their worst 3 dives. And that's hard, because when we go to a championship meet, we're in the finals, and these poor kids are just getting off the board. But that's the way the format is, and that's the way we do it. Now, every state has a different way for qualifying for the state meet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how All-American works, because All-American is consistent across the country. All-American is a championship meet format. So you have to have 11 dives. You have to have a minimum DD, different for boys and girls. And you have to have a minimum score, which is 375 for both. Now, when they're figuring the DD for each one, the voluntaries don't count. So we get the kids who are inexperienced, so you have to have a 13.0 to qualify for All-American, and they all add all 11 dives DD, and, well, I've got 16.0 DD. Now you got to take the voluntaries out. Well, now I only have 12.5. Now you know what you have to do to qualify for All-American. And with All-American, if you're not familiar with that, you have to be filmed 11 dive meet, the same 11 dive meet. Send it to Don, and we get to sit around for a couple days and watch the best divers in the high school divers in the country, and it's fun. I love doing it. Do we have any questions so far? Yes, sir.
Simple question. We go to meets, and the opposing team doesn't have any divers, and their coach doesn't want to judge.
The question is, we go to a meet, and the host team doesn't have any divers, and they don't want to judge. We can have two judges. Hopefully, we can. You have. If I'm that diving coach in that situation, I would judge, and I've been able to pull my head swim coach along with me, so we could have two judges. When you have two judges, they multiply that score by 1.5 to give a comparable score to three judges. So I've been very fortunate to have my head swim coaches, and I've had several of them, who have all followed diving enough that they could do a great job with the diving. Okay, any questions about? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. 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 The question is, can you have three judges to qualify for All-American? And Don's the one to answer that question. Yeah.
The rules say it has to be a championship meet. Championship meet in somewhere in the rule does say it's 5 judges. But when we looked at it, we've had to change that because we all have been in championship meet with a small group of divers and we don't have a judge. So we do accept 11 divers for frown on it, but it is acceptable.
Like I said, the question was, can you have three judges for a championship meet? And initially, no. We've made some adjustments to, yes, they could have three judges for it. That's the only one. I thought you had two. Okay. Yes, Don.
What do you tell a swim coach who is sitting down and judging their first meet?
I tell them, judge what you see.
And then the swim coach, I'm afraid, I don't want to look bad.
The question was, what if you have a swim coach that isn't feeling comfortable judging? I just tell them, got to start somewhere. And usually, if it's a meet like that, the results aren't going to be life-shattering. It's usually not going to disqualify somebody for qualifying for state or qualifying for All-American. Just like the diver, they're getting experience. Now I have a new judge getting experience, and I've very rarely not had a brand new judge, so to speak, not kind of fault. Hopefully, and this has happened, they've seen enough that they have an idea in their head anyway. And they've been around the pool with things going on that they've been able to do a pretty good job. Every once in a while they get too high or get too low. Any other questions in that realm? Okay. Safety. I run a swimming pool during the summer, so safety is always one of my big concerns. One of the things is divers are always cold. It doesn't matter if the temperature in the pool is 85 degrees. They get out of that water and they're always cold. So, and in fact, it was either Swim World or ESPN.com did an article. Somebody asked a question. They watch the Olympics, and the Olympic guys get out and they go right into the showers. And they go, they were just in the water. Why are they in the showers? Because usually the showers are warm. And if you've ever had a 75-pound freshman with zero body fat get up on that board and they're blue and they're shivering because they're so cold, you realize that they need to have something to warm them up. There are several different ways to do that. We are fortunate at my pool that the locker room is right off the pool, so I run a hose from the shower to the diving board with warm water. There are places that are fortunate enough to have hot tubs. They wouldn't let me have one, even though I ask one for every year. But they won't let me have one. This year, though, we finally got an infrared heater. And unfortunately, they didn't ask me what kind we needed, and they got a 220-volt infrared heater for a 110 outlet. So they're working on that right now. So they're always cold. Some people just get a bucket of warm water where they can put their chamois in and stuff like that. I've seen other places who have parkas and things like that. But they're always cold. It doesn't matter. They could be outside during the summer and they're going to be cold. Concussions. Concussions are a big concern, not only from hitting the board, but I had a young man one time knock himself unconscious by just hitting his face on the water. So concussions are still a big deal. I had last year a girl who hit her head on the water and was gone for the season because of concussions. So the concussions are one of the things that I watch out for quite a bit. And then hitting the board. It doesn't happen very often. Most kids their subconscious says, get as far away from the board as possible. But there are times when they go brain dead and they hit the board. Fortunately, we have a trainer in the building. He's able to come and take care of things. And if anybody ever dies for a long period of time, somewhere or other they're going to clip a toe or a hand on the board. It's just one of those things that as a coach, you have to look out for. If you're using the proper techniques, then hopefully they will not come close. Swimmers in the diving lane. I've had coaches tell me that they take the lane line out for the divers and they have kids swimming on the inside of that lane. That is just an accident waiting to happen. It just takes one little freshman or sophomore beginning swimmer to drift down in the middle of that lane. Or one beginning diver who's not watching and lean a little bit when he takes off and lands off. So we have a coach in our league that when he comes to our pool, they want to warm up in the diving lane, and I won't let him. And he doesn't like that, but my pool, my rules. To advance in our sport or in diving, the kids have to do something they have never done before in their life. Having that kid first time go from a front dive to a front somersault can sometimes be almost stop them in their tracks because they're so scared of it. And then the fear part about it is, I have a girl right now who can dive off of the end of the board, can do an approach, but can't put them together because for some reason in her mind she knows she's going to get hurt. And the biggest thing I have to, or we have to overcome is this idea that quit thinking about the bad things that are going to happen, think about the good things that are going to happen. And they're either going to get there or they're not. Okay. Some other concerns that I have. Last year I had 16 girls come out for girls diving. And I have some swim coaches who go, that's too many, you're going to have to cut. I don't cut people for any reason. When I was a senior in high school, we had this little freshman who, he didn't know how to point his toes. 4 years later, he was an All-American, got a diving scholarship, state champion. So you never know, and I've had girls who started from zero and have qualified for All-American in 1 year. So you never know what you can get till you can give them a chance to. There might be some times when you have to. I mean, let's face it, we have facilities that won't support those things. But please give them a chance. Warm-ups for swim meets. It takes anywhere between 35 and 45 seconds per dive. You can only have one diver on the board at once. So when you're thinking about warm-ups, if you have 16 or 12 divers, that's going to be a long warm-up for them. Team building. We were talking about this the other day. Because diving and swimming are different, there is sometimes not an understanding between the two of what's getting involved. And I could tell you a whole bunch of stories, horror stories about how there has been conflicts between the two groups, even between the two groups of parents. Speaking of parents, fortunately, since I just deal with high school kids, most of the kids that come out for high school diving, parents don't know anything, which is great, because then I can tell them stuff and they don't know what's going on. I do have every once in a while, I have year-round divers come in, and those parents have been great anyway because they know what's going on, so I don't have to explain things. But just to give you one example of a parent who I didn't get along with, freshman girl got an email from mom. Her daughter had dove at a little club, and she was offered a varsity position on the soccer team. And she wanted to know if she could play soccer and dive. And I tried to explain to mom, she has a varsity position on the soccer team. She's not even going to be a JV diver yet. And she wasn't real happy about that. In fact, I came to practice, and Arvel meets me at the door, and they go, she wants to dive, play soccer, and run track all the same season. That's the last practice we saw her at diving. I don't know whether she played soccer or track, but that's what that situation is. Resources. The National Federation has an excellent beginning coaching diving course. It is, I watched it one time and I wish I would have had that when I was a younger coach. But again, thanks Sandy for that great class. Thanks somebody for that great class. There's books all over the place. Two of my favorite are from Ron O'Brien and Sammy Lee. And if you don't know who those guys are, they were Greg Louganis' coaches. And as far as I'm concerned, Greg Louganis is the best dive there ever was and there ever will be. I might be a little bit biased, but YouTube videos on anything you can think of, you can find a YouTube video. Now, there's one thing that I use in practice, video replay. It's great that you can tell some kid what to do, but sometimes if they don't see it, they don't understand. So there is a program that you can get. I don't know whether I should advertise it or not, but there's a program that you can get where it will. You can record things, and it will delay the video so they can do the dive. You can explain what they need to change, and they can go see the video. And I use this put this on a tripod. I can hook it up to a TV, and they get to see what they either did right or did wrong. I use it every day. And with the iPad, it's really great because if you want to go to a meet, you can take this with you. And the program that I use was just terribly expensive, $7.99. We just broke the whole swim budget. We were looking into that, and there was one that was a company that was going to come in and put cameras. It's going to cost $500 a year. I don't think that's one we're going to use. But this one we just downloaded from the internet, and it worked. Okay. Who makes a good candidate for diving? Always the first one on the list is gymnast. Now, yes, gymnasts make good candidates, but gymnastic techniques are just a little bit different than diving techniques. If you watch a gymnastic meet, you'll notice they're all horizontal and fast. Diving is vertical and slow. So sometimes it's hard for those gymnasts to transfer those skills. I have one right now who just likes to run down the board. Excellent gymnast, but hasn't got the idea that diving's up and down. Dancers. Dancers have great form. And in diving, you have to look good to do well. And they're great. Who do I have in there? Pole vaulters. Pole vaulters are, if they're any good, they know how to rotate backwards. So reverses aren't quite as hard for them to learn. Who do I have in there? Football players. Some of my best male divers have been football players. The gentleman who holds our 11-dive record was a senior, came out as a senior and was a diver, and became a diver. Football players usually aren't scared of anything. And they're not scared of getting hurt. So that was his positive about him, because he hit the board one time really hard. I mean, from the waist down, he hit the board. Back on board the next day, qualified for state, took 8th in state. Baseball players, basketball players, any athlete usually will make a good candidate for a diver. It's just to get them to realize that, yes, they can use their athletic abilities that they've developed in other sports in diving. Trampolinists, that's what last one on the list. Trampolinists and gymnasts are used to landing on their feet. Well, diving's a head-first sport. And trying to get them to go from feet first to head first, sometimes there's a mental block with them. And sometimes they are the ones that smack their face on the water and get the concussions. But that's it. That's all I have. Are there any questions? Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the positions was straight. And I'm wondering what the discussions were and the end of the conversation that might have taken place to change the older layout.
Right. Yeah. As far as changing the name of the position, no, I don't. The question was, has there been a discussion about changing the name of the straight position to layout position, which it used to be called? As far as I know, it's going to be kept straight. Yes, Don?
I think what he's asking is, we used to, everything straight terminology just was layout.
Yeah.
I think the answer is the definition of layout back then was more like
Yeah. Correct.
So the idea was, we don't want them there, we want them.
Once it's straight, yeah.
So we had to eliminate that term, because that term on a back dive straight looked more like a half.
in sometimes, for example, one of the rule change proposal was eliminating the forward double straight position. It's a hard dive to do in the straight position, or reverse somersaults in the straight position. Always end up with a curved back, more times than not. So it's not really straight position. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. 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 Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Does your referee in your state school? And if so, what are the pros and cons of having that referee school or not?
The question is, does the referee at a championship event score? In our state, no. The referee is just the referee.
Is that what you like, or would you recommend that they do score, or who scores? Coaches?
In the state of Kansas, we have coaches that score. We have had some swim coaches.
Like it?
We have a referee in Kansas for the state meet. As far as judging, in our state, we don't have too many people away from diving coaches who, for a championship situation, we feel are qualified enough to. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe the same answer, maybe they aren't as confident as we like.
The officials need a lot of help. And we do provide, we do provide clinics.
Yeah.
And, we say, all right, come in and watch. We'll give you a big diver, a medium bid, and an advanced bid. And go through, and the coach diver will put on something at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And why.
And why?
As long as you're consistent, if you want to be consistent and your guys are, you're between a 3 and a 7, and you're consistent with all the scores, it's not as offensive to the coaches. But it's, we would prefer the diving coaches to do that, but they won't allow it.
And because the judging system is to get those 3 middle dives, the more the judges you have, the better those 3 middle dives are. But if you only have 3, then you're in. Yeah,
Well, to clarify, if Russ decided it was easier to officiate in Kansas that he didn't want to do it, he could designate, the school can designate somebody to judge, which means he could put me down or somebody else. Historically, when I first started coaching 42 years ago, in Kansas, we had one family that kind of knew diving, and the son was the diving coach at the University of Kansas. We get to the state meet, and they've hired judges to judge. Instead of, you had mom, dad, son, and then 5 other people, or 4 other people that were judging. 5 people.
7.
Somewhere in there, we didn't even have 7. I think we only had 5 of them, come to think of it. And, they had certain opinions about certain divers that they knew. So it was much better when we went to school. I mean, we have 9 in Kansas, 9, 7, 9.
We had 7 judges.
Seven judges. So you eliminate the partiality.
Yeah.
I have to answer this, but, because the thing is we're struggling, I would say, in New York, trying to figure out what's the best method to do each thing. And I'd like to get an idea from the other states. Whereas John and I talk a lot about, how you qualify for state meetings. Is it better to qualify, for the score, or a head-to-head competition where you take 6 and move on? I'll go with that.
The question is what's the best way to qualify for state? In Kansas, we use the same model as we do as All-American. You have a DD requirement and a score requirement. I know some states just use scores. I know some states use regionals and district type qualification. In Kansas, if you meet those criteria, you're in the state meet.
In New York, we're struggling with trying to keep the numbers.
Yeah.
Recently, we have, well, we only had, I think, 4 systems. But we've had 6.
Yeah.
Because we've gone to a qualifying score. And to bring it down, we would love to bring the score up. And what would Don say? Your judge is just going to bring
Yes.
it down.
Yeah.
So it's not going to change anything. So that's my question. My question is, I guess in the best of both worlds, if you could run a qualifying meet in the top 6 move, that would be the best. But then that's going to create in the state travel, which is not going to happen. The state will put them up. So, but if you did a 1-day qualifying meet, you didn't have holidays. That over a qualifying score. You know my answer. Keep scoring is the best.
Yes. It's
If you go head-to-head, you know who's first, second, third, then you might argue about, a place. But head-to-head, you have a fair representation of who is better on that day.
Do you have a DD requirement as well as score, or just score?
We do not have a DD requirement.
That would bring down the numbers greatly. Because you can score real high on a one-on-one, but you're not going to necessarily score higher on when you have certain DD. If we got in Kansas, you had to have both.
It is. It is. There's a lot more think they can. Yeah. Go back in the old days, real old days, when I was in high school, the swimmers judged the dual meets. And it got them more involved, and as far as I can remember, they did a good job. Now we got to the state meet, and the swimmers didn't judge there, but yeah, Arnold.
Not only do we have a DD requirement in order to qualify for the state, but we found that there was, for a time, there was no restrictions on what your DD was at the state. So kids were doing dives that they added up less than the qualifying DD. So now they have to do the DD or higher, the required qualifying DD or higher at the state meet. And that eliminated the kids that, quite honestly, when I was coaching, there was one particular school that would qualify kids for diving because they threw high scores, and they got to the state meet, and the girls were literally in tears because their diving coaches put dives on their diving sheets that they couldn't do, and they were so afraid of trying. They didn't warm up. They were
Yep.
just active way to happen.
And I just say that is why I like head-to-head. Because I don't care if it's little guys or big guys.
Yeah.
You're doing better than the other people in the meet.
Kansas, we're in a situation where we don't have that many divers. So we yeah, we're trying to get more.
New York, Michigan, Texas, we're trying to get
We split up in two different categories. In our smaller schools, the past 2 years we've had 16 kids at the state meet, but when we first started it, we had 3 to 5 at the state meet. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
One of the interesting things that came out of our story yesterday is that divers only have the last two. We have 2 leagues here in New York, the big league and our section. That was the only time during the season that we did that.
Because it,
You know, and so we've got, what came out of that was we had one section that had 8 divers qualified for the state championship, and they were cut. All 5 of them were cut after the first 5 dives. But that's the problem we run into. I guess my question is, do you and anyone else in this thing, we cut after 3.
after, yeah, if you have more than 32, you're allowed to cut.
We don't.
Yeah, we don't.
They come when they come from an 8-hour trip.
Yeah.
We're not going to have to just do 3, although 53 dives, we come off and just do a 53. That's it. But the diving we allow, we give them 5 dives. 3 relays for that. But I'm just wondering, is already staying cutting at 3? Are we going to 5? Or you have to go to the whole thing?
Well, in situation in Kansas, there were times when they had over 40 divers, when we had just one class. And the state association decided if they qualify for state, they're doing 5 dives. Now, since we split into 2 situations, our smaller schools, we just get enough to fill finals anyway for right now. But in Kansas, we also can qualify at a 6-dive meet. They can qualify at a 6-dive meet, but when they go to state, they must fulfill the 11-dive criteria. Yeah. Yeah.
It also says in the rule book that this is not suggested. It may be done in case where there's a big number.
Yeah.
You've got 60 kids, you've got to do something
Yeah.
more, they can calculate. But it's not the word standard, it's pretty right in the rule book as well.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's, oh yeah.
How do you, I'm intrigued with qualifying for the left dive meet with 6 dives. What's the best way to do that?
We have, there's There's a DD requirement for 6 dives and a score requirement that's separate from 11 dives. But like I said, they can qualify at a 6 dive meet, but if they don't meet the 11 dive criteria, then they don't get to participate. And we have.
You don't have to do a reverse in your list to qualify for state.
Correct.
That's not a whole problem.
Usually the kids that do reverses can't do the 11 dive qualification, so they don't get a dive. And this situation has been brought up. Well, can we consider that just a consideration for it? And when we have schools that have 200 people in the school and they have 1 diver, we try to get them at least an opportunity to qualify for state. They may not participate in state, but if they qualify, then they can say they qualify for state. Yeah. Yeah. That.
Somewhere it's going to come out. If they do it in their final 3 dives, they don't even have to do it at state.
Yeah, that's, yeah. We have. We had a young lady who could not do a reverse dive. She saved it. Reverse somersault, no problem. Other optionals, great. Couldn't do a reverse dive if she wanted to. Got to the state meet, made the finals. Last dive was a reverse dive. You knew that she couldn't do it, so she was disqualified because it was not a fair attempt. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Don?
I'm starting to think that we're unique in this. In our qualifying, we're head-to-head, but we also added the component that to qualify for the last 3 dives, we keep 4 more than qualify for our state.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, not only do you have to do it, you got to beat 4 people to make the state.
Yeah.
Which eliminated that I can't do that unless you die, whatever it is. So I don't go about it.
The reverse dive thing is intriguing. I'm going to have to go back to our state and say something about that. Yeah, because, yeah, you qualify for state and not do all the dives. That's not.
We don't want to lessen the number in your state.
Yeah.
That's not.
Yeah. Well, it won't happen for a few years anyway.
That was put in Kansas years ago, and they haven't taken it out because there were so few opportunities for some divers in some parts of the state even have an 11 dive meet.
I can see that in Wyoming. Yeah.
At their conference meet, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so they felt like that was unfair compared to swimmers that in Kansas you can qualify at any meet of the season, so you have 10 opportunities to qualify for state as a swimmer, but you only had 1 opportunity as a diver. And so that's one reason they lobbied to do 6 dives.
Yeah.
Everybody is allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Clarification in the rule.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I hear a lot of people the first 5 before
Mm-hmm.
And then we stick the normal 6 dives to the diving spot.
Interesting. Yeah.
And we do things like that as well.
Harwell?
I think a big part of it comes down to this. The diving judge has to sign a diving sheet, and if the diving sheet has some kind of integrity,
Yeah.
they're not going to lie about the fact that the kid can do the dive or not. And it's just like in swimming, you wouldn't normally put somebody, maybe a coach is trying to do it, but you're not going to put a kid in the butterfly if they can't do the butterfly. You're not going to put somebody at risk. And if you have any kind of integrity whatsoever, you want to put a kid on a diving sheet with a dive that they can't do.
I would like to agree with that, but
But unfortunately, that doesn't happen.
They've done it in 3 times, so they can do it. I've seen
yeah,
them do it,
yeah,
but they do it more than they do.
yeah, yeah. It's Then when like I say, well, this girl I was talking about, well, she can do 10 dives. She can still fail that last dive and still score for the point. Score points for the team. I coached her for a couple years. Her whole high school career, she couldn't do a reverse dive. Could not do it. Everybody knew that. She made finals at state. Last dive, reverse dive. Couldn't do it. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And because everybody knew that she couldn't do this dive, she got disqualified. But, like I say, I see my own personal opinion. I see sometimes, and when we go about rules, people trying to find ways to go around the rules. And unfortunately, we have not a lot, but there's usually some person everywhere who doesn't see the comma in this place or the period here. Yeah.
It's horrible. I'd love to. It's so sad to see coaches, and the butterfly doesn't bother me, which is not.
Yeah.
But the guys that have people that we all know they can't do the guys.
Yeah.
The coach does that. It's going to take, unfortunately, one kid to get really hurt and have a big lawsuit that everybody will hear about.
Yeah.
That's the only way this is going to change. These coaches who are involved. And all that, and are supposed to get a point and sacrifice our son to do it. For that.
And things like that happen, and they go, oh, we'll just get rid of diving altogether.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, unlike gymnastics, we get to dive into a big hot tub.
Yeah.
Big bathtub, very safe.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is, if you look at the diving, it's like a flying.
The 103 that he had.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
103, if we would have asked him what the zero stood for, the answer is what?
Yeah.
0, if it was a 1,
Yep.
would give you now a flying. 113 is a 103 is a flying something. And I've seen some kids who are flying in 1.5 or 2.8. Incredible.
Yeah, certain period. Yeah. Yeah. That comes, I'm sure that's held over for a long time ago. I know it's been around for at least 30 years. Any more questions or discussions?